I'm really pleased to introduce today's speakers, Diana or Dee Nicholas, a co-PI from Drexel University. Thank you, who represents a project called Creative Interdisciplinary Research in Graduate Education, or CIRGE.
I'm super pleased to be here with you today representing the Creative Interdisciplinary Research Graduate Education Group at Drexel. And I myself am an architect who wrote a graduate program in design research. And this team has design research, chemistry, education, and psychology as the interdisciplinary group. And next slide, please. So I always start out with a couple quotes, and I'm going into my 12th year of collaborating with a microbiologist on a project that we've developed, and my 30th year of collaborating with scientists, engineers, architects, interior designers, and artists. So collaboration is a big part of my who I am and what I do as a researcher. And, you know, we really try to present this program to the students as a way of expanding their viewpoint on what they're doing and giving them a little bit of this, this viewpoint that you need to have now to operate in the complex world that we're in. One of the things that we talk about a lot is the idea that the definition of a problem has become part of the problem-solving process. So especially as designers, we often used to be sort of in just the like, here's the problem, solve it phase, but now that's expanded and become a much more collaborative phase for everybody. And so being at the table as part of that is really exciting for me and my students as part of this project. Next, please. So our goals in developing this program were to provide students with deeper understanding of what creativity in research is, and give them strategies and tools for their own creative processes, give them a firsthand experience in understanding how diverse disciplines approach creative research, and help students to understand the challenges of working in interdisciplinary teams. The team itself also learned a lot about these topics at the same time. So we were concurrently, as we were doing the research study on the courses that we developed and running the courses, we actually learned a lot about how that works at the pedagogical level on the other side of things as well for those that are delivering the pedagogy. What our project actually is, next please, is a graduate interdisciplinary team-oriented creativity minor that's now on the books at Drexel. And again, this funding has been instrumental in helping us set this program up. And what we deliver is a series of courses that actually bring this way of thinking to the students. Our students are from across the university, so we have engineering, architecture, interiors, design research, biology, chemistry, physics, students from all across the university in class together, graduate students. Often there's multiple PhD students who are heading towards their candidacy. And then I run a master's program. So there's master's students from my program that are sometimes in the courses as well. So there's some tiered learning and mentoring that actually happens among those levels. And the goal is really for the students to take these two courses, which I'm going to briefly describe, and then to also take a series of electives that are outside of their area. A graduate minor at Drexel is 4 courses, and we're on the quarter program. So our courses are 3 credits each. So everything's a little bit, seems like more credits than if you're on the semester system. Can I have the next slide, please? So there's 2 classes, as I mentioned: Creative Interdisciplinary Team Research Principles and Practice, and Enhancing the Creativity of a Research Project. Creative Interdisciplinary Team Research Principles and Practice is a project where the students, and I'm going to show some in-depth work from that class, that's where the students come together. They define a problem, a current problem, through their teamwork, and then they come up with solutions to that problem. Then they deploy and actually do an evidence-based design process as part of that to understand some possible solutions to the project. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. And then the other project is the other class is Enhancing the Creativity of a Research Project, which is where the students take that thinking that they've done in the first class and bring it into their own research project. And so the goal here is, if you're a PhD student in STEM and you're heading towards your proposal for your candidacy, this is meant to give you a viewpoint and a kind of expanded way of looking at your research, which we know for PhD students is often very targeted. And so just being able to give them a more creative context for that, and to also give them tools that they can use as they work through that marathon. That is, even just a PhD proposal is a marathon, let alone the PhD itself. Next, please. So I want to speak a little bit about a process that I've developed in design research, which is gather, analyze, synthesize, and conceptualize. And this is what I mean by evidence-based design. So evidence-based design is really about using the context and the people that are kind of outside of the classroom or of the studio to actually drive the problem solving. And I'm sure this is a very sophisticated audience. I'm sure you've all heard this term before, but I like to just define everything pretty simply. Students engage in an iterative process that happens over and over again, where they gather information, they analyze the information, they synthesize the information, and then they conceptualize around what they've learned. And so that conceptualized piece is really the piece where we really try to push students to think more creatively. Then they usually apply this cycle in what we call a mini pilot. And a mini pilot, if you don't know, is just a small piece of the project or a smaller version of the project that they then take back to whoever they've been talking. So a solution that they've come up with, they take it back to who they talked to in the gather portion, and they test it a little bit with them. And so I know this is kind of a crazy picture, but it's actually a proposal for an asthma robot for children to stay current on their asthma medication. And so everything's done really quickly. So it's not a robot, obviously it's just clay, but the importance of the idea is really shows in the reflection that the student does and in the process they do to get to that mini pilot, and then what they learn from taking it back to the people that they spoke to. Next, please. I'm speaking mostly about my part in the process, but there's what we do as a team actually is a lot of thinking about thinking. So how do you think creatively? There's a lot of meta cognitive work that the students do in these classes where they think about what's successful for them. How do they think when they're thinking creatively? And this is a really well-known framework that came out of the UK Design Council. It's called the Double Diamond. I'm sure plenty of folks here are familiar with it. It's a design thinking framework. So we do teach them this, but we also teach them how to bring that into their process as a researcher and as a sort of STEM person, and how do they how does that become part of what they do when they're working in a group, when they're working in a lab? There's a lot of conversation around how does this fit into the larger research lab. And my colleague, Professor Fleming, who wasn't able to be here, he actually runs quite a large chemistry lab, and we often have students from his lab, so they bring that perspective as well. A lot of cross-disciplinary conversation about that. Next, please. So some examples of gathering, they speak to people from across whatever context they're thinking about for their project. This last round of students in the first class actually came up with a food insecurity project around the food insecurity for students on campus. So we had a physics major, physics PhD student, design research student, a product design student, and several other students from chemistry working on this project all together and learning the techniques. Along the bottom are the ways that they are kind of having the perspectives that they're kind of using in each piece. Can I have the next slide? So through analysis, they define the problem better. So you can see asking, the double diamond, asking, looking, learning. So those are all like important reminders of the areas that they're in as they're doing these projects. Next, please. In synthesis, things really start to come together. They get more complex, and they start to develop more complex ideas, and they do ideation. And these are some of the tools: concept maps, rose, bud, thorn, and journey maps. It's actually rose, thorn, bud, but for some reason, students always call it rose, bud, thorn. Next, please. And then these are some final sketches. What they actually came up with was a linkage system and a set of packaged engagements for students across the campus that are dealing with food insecurity. Next, please. And then doing it again and again, so iterating around this. The next class, the students will take these techniques into their research projects. And we've had students, as I said before, from an extremely diverse group who've deployed these tools in their PhD work and their MS research work. Next, please. So that's what I have for today. I'm going to pass it to Dr. Vance, but I want to again thank everybody for attending, and I'm really excited to talk more about this in the breakout room. Thank you.